Frostivus 2023 just released, and with it we got the 7.35 update, which contained a lot of things. In this video, we're going to focus on the new items that 7.35 introduced. There's a good amount, so let's get into it. And if I sound a little different, it's because I have a Frostivus cold, so bear with me. Alright, we're just going to go down the list, starting with Tiara of Salam. This is a pretty simple item that provides 6 mana regen and costs 1800 gold. This builds into some pretty big items like Hex, Refresher, and Octarine. Oh yeah, and you have to buy it at the secret shop. Next is Kanda, or Kanda. I think I'd probably go with Kanda. This is an item that requires Chrysalis, Phylactery, and a 600 gold recipe, coming out to a total of 5,000. I like this because it allows Phylactery to be upgraded, which I hope means that it'll be picked up more. I think it's a fun and interesting item. It's just that it was kind of, I feel like, hard to use on a lot of heroes and kind of hard to justify getting it. But now that you can upgrade it, it might make more sense for more heroes to get it. The passive on it is a 30% chance to deal 160% critical damage on attacks. So like Phylactery, it's good on heroes that have spells that target a single unit, but it's just more powerful. So it might be good on heroes like PA who have these single target abilities and want to do a lot of damage in a short amount of time. It has a 6-second cooldown, so you can't be spamming it all the time and getting all that bonus damage. Next is Perasma. Perasma? I guess that's how you say it? Perasma. Perasma. It's just a weird word. What is that? What is Perasma? Apparently it's an artist on Spotify, Apple Music. Okay, so it's a band. So apparently they added a band in Dota. That's good, that's good. Alright, so Perasma is an upgrade from Witchblade, which also requires Mystic Staff, coming out to a total of 5,575. Pretty pricey. The passive on Perasma is pretty similar to Witchblade's passive, except it's just a little stronger. The intelligence multiplier is increased from 0.75 to 1, and the cooldown is decreased from 9 seconds to 7 seconds. It also has a passive which makes all of your attacks apply a minus 20% magic resistance debuff on enemies for 4 seconds. So again, another item that's getting a new option for upgrading it, which is probably pretty good on heroes that already buy Witchblade, so they'll have that option to upgrade it instead of having to replace it down the line. And yeah, Witchblade, but stronger, I guess. Alright, now we get into the neutral items. Yes. The first one, Safety Bubble, which honestly does not seem that great. It basically gives you a 100 HP barrier that restores after 5 seconds of not taking any damage. It also gives 5 health regen, which isn't too bad, but I don't know. I'm kind of skeptical if this is going to be good or not. The 100 HP barrier is pretty low, but maybe in early engagements it can be just enough to help you out. I feel like there are probably better tier 1 items to go for, but we'll see how people prioritize this. The next item is pretty weird, but I think it actually might be one of my favorites so far, just from testing it a little bit alone. I think it's pretty interesting. It's called Light Collector, and it is a tier 2 neutral item. It gives you plus 10% movement speed, which is small, but it's fine. The passive is Unclouded, which gives you 6 health regen during the day and 3 mana regen during the night. If you're not within 200 radius of a tree, these bonuses are doubled. And the active is the really interesting part, I think. It's called Light Break. It's basically a flashbang around your hero that just destroys trees in a 325 radius around you. And it has a cooldown of 30 seconds. The active is why I actually like this item, or at least the idea of it, specifically for supports and warding. Let me explain why. So, I love warding. I love the whole minigame with warding, and one thing about it is that there are lots of little warding spots that can be very valuable, but you need to break like a tree or two to make it work. So then you either have to end up buying a Quelling Blade to do these little warding tricks and warding spots, or you just don't buy one and you ward in spots that are more normal. But with this, you can pretty easily just break a bunch of trees around you and open up these unique warding spots. That's really the biggest use case I can see for this, besides maybe if you get sprouted by an Issues Prophet and then you can just do this to break all the trees around you and run away. The bonus health and mana regen is also pretty good for a support, especially if it's doubled. So yeah, I like the idea of this. I'm excited to play around with it and see if it actually feels valuable for the use case I explained, but maybe it's trash. Who knows? We'll see. Maybe the best use case is you just use it in the middle of a team fight and you cause some kind of distraction, maybe make 1 or 2 people spend half a second looking at you instead of focusing on something else in the fight. I don't know. We'll see. Next is Whisper of the Dread, which is another tier 2 neutral item. This one is pretty interesting, but I think it'll be pretty straightforward for who wants to use it and who doesn't. It provides plus 150 mana, and the passive, Tunnel Vision, grants plus 10% spell damage, but decreases the wearer's daytime vision by 15%. And here's what that looks like. It's a pretty good amount of vision to lose, but if you're a hero that relies on spells a lot early in the game to farm waves, farm camps, fighting early on, the trade-off might be worth it. Alright, now we're into tier 3 items. The first one, Doubloon. This provides plus 5 health regen and plus 2.5 mana regen. And the active is a toggle which is pretty interesting. It's called Flip, and it converts 20% of your max health to max mana, or converts 20% of your max mana to max health. And that has a cooldown of 5 seconds, so you can't keep spamming the toggle back and forth. I'm really interested to see how people end up using this effectively, and if it's good or not. The biggest use case I could see is maybe on some heroes like Tidehunter who might struggle having enough mana to use all of their spells. Maybe if they have like a refresher and then they want to get a double ravage off along with any of his other spells and items, and sometimes you just struggle having enough mana. Maybe the trade-off of health for mana is enough, especially if you're compensating the health for some armor items or something like that. Or maybe you're a hero that has a bunch of mana and you kind of just want to tank up some more at the point of the game where tier 3 items are out, and you can sacrifice some of your large mana pool for some more health to make you a little more survivable. I don't know. This is an interesting one. I'm excited to see how people end up using it. If you have any ideas for this or any of the other items, let me know in the comments below and we can talk about it. Because I'm sure there are some mechanics and some interactions that I'm just missing that are probably pretty obvious for some of these items. So yeah, let me and everyone else know in the comments and we can talk about it. Alright, next is another tier 3 item, Nemesis Curse. This gives you plus 35 damage and has a couple of passives. The first one, Glass Cannon. The wearer takes 8% more damage from all sources. The trade-off is the other passive, Glassify. The wearer's attacks apply a debuff on the enemy targets that increases all damage taken by them by 12%. It lasts for 5 seconds and only one enemy can have this debuff at the same time. I feel like I'm saying this about pretty much every item, but this one is pretty interesting. So this is really leaning into the glass cannon type gameplay that we see sometimes, maybe like a sniper or something, that it will just build a bunch of damage, but they're really easy to kill. The debuff that it applies on the target makes it so that all of their incoming damage is increased by 12%, which that I think might make this item pretty valuable. And I'm wondering if it might be good on a support or something. Yeah, supports are already kind of squishy, and so taking 8% more damage from all sources might just make them evaporate in a team fight. But if you're a support hero, or maybe like an offlane hero that's already pretty much dying all the time in fights, and you're able to get this Glassified debuff on an enemy, and then your teammates can come in and do a bunch of damage and hopefully kill them, maybe that'll be worth it. I don't know. Maybe it'll be good, especially on heroes that hunt a lot, maybe like a PA, so they don't have to worry about taking incoming damage because their game plan is kind of to just jump on the enemy and kill them really quickly anyway. Or maybe like a Storm Spirit. Maybe those are the people that will find this item the most useful. Alright, now we're into tier 4 neutral items. And this one, I'm not going to say is interesting. Okay, it actually is interesting. This one is definitely interesting, and I'm not sure the best use case for this. Well, I guess I kind of am, because there is pretty much only one use case for this. The item is Ancient Guardian. It gives you 50 damage, and the passive Ancient Power grants an additional 50 damage if the wearer is within 2,000 range from an Ancient. What? Okay, so this is what 2,000 range looks like. So it's pretty big, but there are only 2 Ancients on the map. Now this could be good if you're stuck in your base defending high ground. You're definitely going to be in range of your Ancient. The description says within 2,000 range of an Ancient. So you'll get the bonus damage if you're pushing the enemy's base too, and you're within range of their Ancient. So I guess it can be good if you're on the winning or losing side of a game. You get more damage to defend your Ancient, or get more damage to attack the enemy's Ancient and end the game. Besides that, it does give 50 damage, which is a pretty good amount, so I could see this one being picked up. Next is another tier 4 neutral item, Avianas Feather. I don't know who Aviana is. If anyone knows, that's some like deep lore thing, let me know. Because I feel like this item is actually pretty cool, and this is another one I'm pretty excited about. At least I think so. It gives you plus 25% evasion and plus 30 movement speed. And the passive is a great song, Freebird. Now I'm not going to say this one's interesting, but I will say it is unique. There we go. When below 30% HP, the wearer gains flying movement, but not flying vision. The use case for this that I see is that you're dying and you get flying movement and you're able to escape. That's the main one, which is pretty cool. It could be nice on supports just to help you survive better. I mean, you get some evasion, you get some movement speed, which is always nice. And if you're dying, getting that flying movement to maybe get up or down a cliff or just over some trees to escape from your attacker could be pretty good. So like Light Collector, I'm excited about this one to try it out on supports and see if it's actually pretty good. But yeah, this one's pretty interesting. And I just like the picture. I think it looks really nice. Alright, the last tier 4 neutral item is Rattle Cage. It provides plus 12 armor and a passive Reverberate. And what this does is when you take 180 damage from any source, you fire a projectile at 2 random nearby enemies within a 600 radius. The projectiles deal 125 physical damage and slow the target's movement speed and attack speed by 100% for 0.2 seconds. I feel like this is clearly pretty good on heroes who are going to go in and tank a lot of hits, so the passive will trigger, and it also gives you 12 armor, which will help you tank up and sustain all the damage. Another item that could be good on supports, I mean the plus 12 armor could be great when you're playing against heroes who are trying to just jump you and take you out of the fight instantly. Also the passive for that exact same reason, since it'll slow the attacker's attack speed by 100%, although it's only for 0.2 seconds, so that's pretty small. But yeah, probably an item mostly for offlaners or any heroes who just want to kind of go in and tank a lot of damage. Alright, the last new item, which is a tier 5 item, Unwavering Condition. This provides plus 95% magic resistance and a passive Unwavering, which sets the wearer's max health to 1500, and it can't be altered by other effects or attributes. Equipping the item also seems to make your hero small. Now when testing this item, I found that it for some reason just kind of wasn't working sometimes. This might be just a bug with the new item, and if so, it's probably already patched by now. Or maybe it was just some weird thing with the demo mode that I was using. But when it was working, it was pretty crazy to see how little damage was being done to my hero. And again, I think this has a more obvious use case, which is that the enemies just have a lot of magic damage, and so you want to counter that by having high magic resistance. The interesting about this though is that by the time tier 5 items are out, I feel like most teams and most lineups are able to do a pretty good amount of physical damage. So setting your max HP to 1500, which is pretty low at that stage of the game, seems like it could be kind of risky. But maybe there are those cases where a lineup is just really magic damage heavy and they never really end up dealing much physical damage. In that case, this item could be pretty good. Unfortunately, we don't see tier 5 neutral items that often, especially in pro games, but I am very curious to see how this one ends up being used and how often it gets picked up, especially in pro games. So yeah, that's that. Again, I think that the ones I'm most excited about are the Light Collector and Avianas Feather, and the reason was imagining these items being picked up on a support and how they can best use them. I thought the use cases were pretty interesting. When there are new items and stuff like that, I often just think, okay, how can a support use this? How can it best be used by a support? Because that's what I play the most. So it's fun to see these items and try to look at it from a support's perspective and see how it can be good for a support, when it can be good for a support, and just how much value it can bring all together. The worst item, I think, which I don't know if this is fair to say because it is just a tier 1 item, is the safety bubble. The 100 HP barrier just sounds so small, although it does give 5 health regen, so that's not so bad. And maybe the 100 HP barrier is just enough to make it justifiable in the early game. I guess it just depends on what other options you have. It could be good, but we'll see. Maybe in the coming days we'll find that safety bubble is absolutely broken and everyone's getting it and I was completely wrong. But what do you guys think about these new items? Were you able to think of any interesting interactions or mechanics with them that could be useful? Which ones did you think were the best, were the worst? Which ones are you the most excited about? Just let me know all your guys' thoughts in the comments and we can talk about it. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.